Hi, welcome to Coaster Mania. I'm Micah, and today I'm going to be ranking the rides at Cedar Point. Cedar Point is the mecca for coaster enthusiasts and contains arguably one of the best coaster collections in the world. I'm going to start this video off by ruining the surprise. We all know what the number one of this park is. It's Blue Streak. No, sorry, it's obviously Iron Dragon. Oh, hold on one second, let me try this again. Let's flip the right side up. There we go. Okay, the number one of this park is... Number 17, Wilderness Run. Katie and I didn't actually ride this one, but fair to say that the smallest kiddie coaster in the park doesn't stack up to the rest of the awesome rides here. This is an old Intamin children's coaster that's been at the park since 1979. This coaster is 443 feet long, has a maximum height of 19 feet, and a top speed of 6 miles an hour. It did used to be called Junior Gemini for a short while there, but now it's known as Wilderness Run. There's nothing really noteworthy about this coaster, so let's just move on. Number 16, Woodstock Express. This is a Vekoma junior coaster, and specifically follows a clone layout labeled 335M. It is labeled this because of the fact that it is 335 meters long, or 1,099 feet long. This ride was opened in 1999 at the park. It has a maximum height of 42 feet and a top speed of 28 miles an hour. The setting of this ride is pretty decent, being right by the river, but it's completely lacking in the way of theming. It has very little forces as it meanders through its layout, which is fine since it is supposed to be a coaster for small children. It would be nice to see it have some more theming and/or landscaping to kind of help the experience though. Number 15, Blue Streak. This is the oldest operating coaster in the park, being opened in 1964. It has a top height of 78 feet, tallest drop 72 feet, top speed at 40 miles per hour, and is 2,558 feet long. This John C. Allen designed Philadelphia Toboggan Coasters, or PTC, made out and back wooden coaster has a very simple but somewhat fun layout. When riding, we experienced mild floater airtime on many of the hills. I remember having a few potholes in various parts of the layout, but it wasn't too uncomfortable. Its placement in the park is somewhat difficult to find, so I wouldn't be surprised if many people miss it in their visit to the park. This coaster has a great historical value, but is a bit of a harder sell due to the other much larger rides in the park. Number 14, Iron Dragon. This aerodynamic suspended coaster opened in 1987 and sports 2,800 feet of track, has a max height of 76 feet and a top speed of 40 miles per hour. This is one of the few aero suspended coasters I don't get incredibly excited about, unlike the others that I've ridden. This feels a lot like an aero mine train with suspended cars. It has 2 lift hills and features a layout which just meanders around its plot of land between Rougarou and Top Thrill Dragster. Compared to other suspended coasters, it is far less forceful. The strongest point of this ride, however, is the finale with the helix over the water, which does provide some okay positives and some fun side-to-side swinging action while the coaster changes directions. Other than that, it isn't the strongest coaster in the lineup. Number 13, Cedar Creek Mine Ride. The placement of this in Iron Dragon is somewhat debatable, but hear me out. Cedar Creek Mine Ride is an aerodynamics mine train opened in 1969 and is 2,540 feet long with a maximum height of 48 feet and a top speed of 42 miles per hour. The best way to describe this coaster is good ol' aero jank. Expect to be tossed around from side to side during those trademark rough aero transitions. Compared to Iron Dragon, in my opinion, this coaster has a nicer setting. You're seeing less of the backstage areas on this ride that are meant to hide the tools and equipment from the maintenance teams, and there's some mild theming near the beginning and end of the ride. The experience on this coaster is also helped by some of the head choppers. The best moment on this ride is during the drop and flyby of the water. The track gets right above the water and almost feels like this could have been a splashdown at some point. Number 12, Wicked Twister. This was a somewhat difficult one since Katie and I only had the chance to ride this once. Wicked Twister was an Intamin impulse coaster opened in 2002 and closed in 2021 with a length of 689 feet, a max height of 216 feet, and a top speed of 72 miles per hour. This thing was broken down most of the time on the 3 days Katie and I spent at the park. In fact, as far as I'm aware, this coaster probably spent most of its life broken down anyways. When it did work, the launch was forceful and thrilling, but we experienced some decent headbanging on the way up the spikes. Katie did come off this ride complaining about her ears hurting from being smacked around in the restraints. I am somewhat sad to see it go, but we didn't have a great experience with this coaster. However, I can appreciate it for its height and speed. Number 11, Corkscrew. Let me start by saying aero loopers hold a special place in my heart. I love the classic feeling of these coasters, the sound of their anti-rollbacks, the design of their trains. I'm very fond of all of it. Corkscrew at Cedar Point, not to be confused with Corkscrew at Silverwood, or at Valley Fair, or at Michigan's Adventure, and so on, is an aerodynamics custom looping coaster opened in 1976. It features a loop and 2 corkscrews within its 2,050 feet of track. It has a max height of 85 feet and a top speed of 48 miles per hour. This follows a very simple oval-shaped layout that was a modification of the earliest corkscrew model. It originally set the record for the largest number of inversions on a coaster, but was quickly beat out by Carolina Cyclone at Carowinds with its 4 inversions. The loop on this coaster is forceful, and the placement of the 2 corkscrews makes for an awesome view when you're walking down the center path at the front of the park. Hold your head on this one because it also has classic aero transitions. Number 10, Rougarou. Rougarou is the floorless B&M conversion of the former stand-up coaster that was Mantis. In a slight retheme and reprogram of the ride, Mantis was renamed to Rougarou once its stand-up trains were switched out for the far more comfortable floorless trains. Rougarou has a max height of 145 feet, 3,900 feet of track, and a top speed of 60 miles per hour. It was originally opened in 1996 and features 4 inversions. Being that it was a stand-up, the layout for this coaster features a lot of the same design language of other B&M stand-ups with its tilted incline loops. This is an element that is relatively uncommon on other rides. This ride does feature the bulky over-the-shoulder restraints, which Katie and I are not huge fans of. Many other coaster fans may not be a fan of the vest restraints on other B&M coasters, but I usually find that those lead more comfortable riding experience than the over-the-shoulder restraints. We did experience a decent bit of rattle on this coaster, but it wasn't as bad as other B&Ms out there. Number 9, Gemini. This might also be slightly controversial, but I feel the need to rate this over Rougarou due to a number of reasons. Some roller coasters may not be that forceful, but are still just plain fun. Rougarou is definitely forceful in certain parts, but I can't fully get over the headbanging and rattle that it had. Opening in 1978, Gemini is the only racing coaster at Cedar Point. Gemini, being a custom aerodynamic special coaster systems racing coaster, well, what a mouthful, has a lot of fun packed into its 3,935 feet of track regardless of which side you're on. Both tracks feature a max height of 125 feet and a top speed of 60 miles per hour. This is one of the only racing coasters I've ever ridden where at certain parts of the ride you can actually reach out and give high fives to riders in the other train. I can understand the safety reason as to why most other coasters don't allow for this, but it's a small thing that helps add to the fun factor of this ride. The drops on this ride, while not insanely steep at 55 degrees, do still provide a bit of that stomach dropping feeling that helps add to the excitement. Gemini lives up to the classic aero name though, and does also have some janky transitions. Number 8, Raptor. I am rating this on the upper half of the list, but I need to preface it in saying that I'm pushing this higher up based on what it could or should be, not entirely on what our experience was. Katie and I only got the chance to ride Raptor once, and it was on the coldest morning of our trip. With its 3,790 feet of track, max height of 137 feet, and top speed of 57 miles per hour, this coaster is not weak. I can understand how some people rate this as their favorite invert, but unfortunately for us, we just didn't get that great of a ride on it. To say that Raptor was running slow would be an understatement. The famous final helix on this ride, which some people swear that it feels like it's going to rip your feet off, didn't do all that much for us. We'll definitely be trying to revisit this coaster on our next visit to try to experience it once it's warmed up. Raptor does have a good long layout with lots of variation in its elements, and also has a good setting being right on the midway. Number 7, Top Thrill Dragster. I have to say our luck was somewhat interesting knowing that we got the chance to ride this 1 week before the major accident that happened that has kept this ride closed since. The 120 mile per hour launch on this 420 foot tall monster is one of the craziest launches I've ever experienced. The acceleration may not have been as fast as Accelerator at Knott's or Dododonpa at Fuji-Q Highland, but sitting in the front seat going 120 miles per hour is one of the craziest feelings I've ever felt. With the ascent, it provides great views of the surrounding park, then immediately goes straight down, providing for a great drop in almost any row. After about 10 seconds, you're in the final brake run waiting to unload. This coaster clears its 2,800 feet of track in an extremely short period of time. I'm definitely curious to see what happens to this coaster in the future when it is reimagined by Cedar Fair. Hopefully they're able to improve not only its reliability, but also its capacity. Number 6. Valravn. Valravn is one of the first B&M dive coasters I've ridden. I'm glad to say I got to ride one of the best first. This ride is a major crowd pleaser with the hanging element at the top of its 223-foot tall first drop. Opening in 2016, Valravn still holds the record as being the tallest dive coaster. Over the course of 3,415 feet of track, this coaster has a max speed of 75 miles per hour and goes through 3 inversions. The first and second drops provided some good ejector airtime, however this coaster isn't particularly forceful. Valravn is a mostly one-trick pony, but it is still very fun for what it is. Number 5. Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is another first for me in the world of B&M in that it was my first experience on a wing coaster. This B&M creation was opened in 2013. At 4,164 feet long, with a max height of 170 feet and a top speed of 67 miles per hour, Gatekeeper gracefully moves through its 6 inversions like an eagle. The first airtime hill after the dive drop provided some surprising airtime for both Katie and I, and the rest of the ride was extremely smooth and graceful. This ride sits in a perfect spot of the park, flying right over the front entrance. Another fun element of this coaster was the near-miss elements. Over the front entrance, you fly through and behind the keyholes, and this provided for the fun factor that Gatekeeper had. I preferred this over Valravn since it felt much less like a one-trick pony and more like a full-fledged and well-thought-out layout. Number 4. Magnum XL200. Okay, between you and me, this is my personal favorite ride at the park. Never before have I experienced such violent ejector airtime as I have on this coaster. I consider myself a bit of an agent of chaos, and this coaster caters to that mindset entirely. The triangle hills on the second half are unreal. This aerodynamics hypercoaster was the first of its kind. Magnum XL200, opening in 1989, stood as the first full-circuit roller coaster to be over 200 feet tall, with a length of 5,106 feet and a top speed of 72 miles per hour. This coaster has stats that even today are somewhat impressive. This ride is essentially a wooden roller coaster with steel track and supports. If you ever get the chance to ride this, make sure you sit in car 1, row 3. This is the best way to experience the coaster, and you will surely get tossed out of your seat with some of the most violent ejector airtime ever. Number 3. Maverick. Now this ride proves that good things can come in small packages. Manufactured by Intamin and opened in 2007, this ride came out with a point to prove. And that is that coasters don't have to set records to be good. With a max speed of 70 miles per hour and a max height of 105 feet, this coaster rips through its 4,450 feet of track fairly quickly. It features 2 launches and 2 inversions, but has a ton of elements packed throughout its layout. Unfortunately, the long line that this ride constantly had gave me quite the sour mood before we got to ride this ride, since we'd be standing in line for almost 3 hours. Fast lane is a must for this ride. The first drop does provide good ejector airtime, and this ride has some insanely whippy transitions throughout. I honestly don't have any major complaints about this ride other than the capacity. The landscaping looks nice, there's some minimal theming, but the overall ride experience is just plain awesome. Number 2. Millennium Force. I'm putting this over Maverick for a few reasons. Yeah, I admit, the height and speed of this get to me. There's nothing quite like going down that first drop and experiencing the sheer sense of speed that this ride has to offer. Being the world's first Giga at 310 feet tall, with a length of 6,595 feet and a top speed of 93 miles per hour, this Intamin creation is one of the best out there. Opened in the year 2000, Millennium Force is still an amazing experience to this day. I even find it amazing how, after all this time, the ride still manages to be one of the smoothest coasters out there and doesn't feel like it's nearing 25 years of operation. The feeling of racing through large portions of the park on this ride is unmatched in that it gives you views of almost the entire peninsula. This really comes out as a great ride no matter which row you ride it in, but I feel as though the front row is the best. Oh, and make sure to keep your mouth closed on this one unless you like eating bugs. Number 1. Steel Vengeance. As if it were any surprise, number 1 is Steel Vengeance. Whenever I think of the voiceover for Disneyland's Thunder Mountain, in which it describes that ride as the wildest ride in the wilderness, I can't help but think that they would have been too afraid to put a recording like that if Steel Vengeance was open at the time. Steel Vengeance needs almost no introduction for us coaster enthusiasts, but I'll give one anyways. This coaster is an RMC hybrid conversion of the former Mean Streak. It was open in 2018 with a max height of 205 feet, 5,740 feet of track, and a top speed of 74 miles per hour. This coaster holds a record for the most amount of airtime on a single roller coaster, boasting an impressive 26 seconds total. Steel Vengeance is the kind of ride that wants you out of your seat more than it wants you in it. It's actually kind of impressive seeing the creative elements that were designed when reimagining Mean Streak's existing layout. One standout part being the outward banked airtime hill after the first drop. If it weren't for how violent Magnum's airtime was, this coaster would have been the most violent airtime in the park. My only complaint with the coaster would be its somewhat repetitive nature. There are a few points throughout the course where it just goes up and down through multiple repetitive airtime hills. This isn't really much of a complaint though, seeing as the airtime is a lot like getting candy for us enthusiasts, so it's almost like complaining about getting too many Tootsie Rolls in a row. Overall, it makes sense why this coaster is at the top of the list for so many coaster enthusiasts. My only questions are, will there ever be anything better, or is there something better than it already? Only time will tell. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, feel free to leave a like and comment below and consider subscribing. I intend on uploading more content as time goes on and as Katie and I experience more parks and coasters. You can also find daily uploads on our Instagram page at Coaster Mania. Soon we'll be opening an Etsy page where you'll be able to buy prints and more of some of your favorite coaster photography of ours. Thanks for watching the video and ride on, Coaster Maniacs!